Hi. So, an introduction to what I'm doing today. I discovered when I was in my preteens reading, and I had, through the years, collected a massive amount of books, and I never really realized how many I had. And then the internet came along, and I started reading on the internet all the time, and I started reading my actual books less and less. Well, one day, last year, year before last, I went to the library. And my ex-boyfriend used to tease me all the time about having more books than the local library. And I kept blowing him off. And I went to the library for something, and our local library is doing remodeling, and they moved to a smaller building. And as I'm looking around this smaller building, I realized I think I have more books than the library does. So I came home and I looked around my collection, which is massively huge. And I decided I needed to weed through the collection. But now I'm a hoarder, so deciding what has to go and what's going to stay is a trick. So I decided to inventory my books, which I haven't done in over a decade. And the last time I counted my books, I had over 5,000 books. They've multiplied because I used to have a used bookstore I went to that did grab boxes, and I would buy the grab box and have 10, 15, 20 books in it. And so I have books I haven't read. I've probably only read about 90% of my collection. So I decided I was going to start reading my books, and the ones that I decided I wanted to keep, I am keeping an inventory of, and the ones I don't want to keep, I put up on eBay, or I take to local used bookstore and try to sell, or every now and again I take a bunch of books to Goodwill or something like that. So far, I'm only 50 books in because, as I've said, I discovered the internet. I spend quite a bit of time on the internet, and I bought a Nook, and I've discovered fan fiction, so I don't read as much as I used to. Now, having said that, I'm going to review a book I just finished reading about 2 days ago. And it is Terry Brooks' Magic Kingdom for Sale Sold. I bought this book at one of our local used bookstores a long time ago. And the reason I bought this book was because when I was in high school, I discovered the Heritage of Shannara series by Terry Brooks, and it was one of my favorite series, and I read the series multiple times. And then when I got my first job, it happened to be some of the first books I bought. I also buy a lot of Anne McCaffrey books, so it wasn't exactly the first book I bought. I think the first book I ever bought was Helen Keller. And I had read the Shannara series and fell absolutely in love with it. Read it multiple times. Well, one day in a grab box of books, I got Tangle Box, I think is the name of it. And I was reading it, and it sounded interesting, but it was the middle of the series. And I'm a bit of a book snob. If I'm going to read a series, I want to start from the beginning. So I hunted it up, and this is the first in the series. Now, this book, for those of y'all who aren't familiar with Terry Brooks, he is a fantasy, sci-fi, lots of dragons and elves and things like that. Very fantastical, nothing realistic. And this particular series, which is called Landover, this gentleman, whose name is Ben Holiday, it starts out with Ben Holiday in the modern times. So the first time I started reading this, I didn't get all the way through the first chapter because it didn't seem very fantasy. So it got put on the shelf and forgot about. I've recently picked it up and started reading it, and this was my in my bag book, because I have a book in my bag, a book in the living room, a book in the bathroom, and a book in the bedroom. Yes, I'm reading 3 or 4 at a time. And so I picked it up and I put it in my bag, and I've been reading on it, and I just finished it. And this character, Ben Holiday, sorry about the rambling, I have a very short attention span. He has lost his wife, and he lives in the modern times, and he's pretty devastated. He gets more and more sad and depressed. and he's looking at this catalog, one of those holiday catalogs, kind of like Sears and Roebucks, and he continues to look at this thing through the years because it was something he and his wife did together. And he sees an advert for a magical kingdom for sale for $1 million. And at first he brushes it off, but it kind of gnaws at him, eats at him. He thinks about it constantly. So he goes to the place and he looks into it, and it seems legit. So he, on a whim, for no apparent random reason, buys this magical kingdom. And they give him this pendant, and they send him to these coordinates up in the country. I don't remember exactly where at, Tennessee or something like that. And he goes out into the woods, and he's walking in the woods, and he goes through this mist, and he's thinking, I'm going to turn back because it's obviously just fake. I'm going to get my money back. And he runs into a dragon, and something chases him through the mist, and he ends up in the magical kingdom. Now, as you would expect, since it's on for sale, it wasn't quite as magical as they expected. Turns out the original king of the kingdom had died, and the heir and the wizard for the kingdom crossed over from the fairy kingdom into the human world and was selling the kingdom. So without the king to kind of, I guess, control the magic, the kingdom was slowly starting to go bad. So he meets his retainers, which he finds the castle and meets his retainers. And the castle's kind of tarnished, and his retainers is a very inept wizard and a dog and a couple of kobolds, which I guess are kind of like, I don't remember exactly what they are. They're kind of like servants of some sort, kind of like goblins or something. And so he decides, because he misses the deadline to go back, so he pretty much has paid for this kingdom, and he decides he's going to give it the good gung-ho. And he travels the land trying to get support from the various peoples of the land, like the fairies and the river people and humans and things like that in the kingdom. And that's the bulk of this story. Once you get past the first chapter, is him traveling, and each people say, well, we'll give you our support if you do this. And when he goes to do this, it's, we'll give you the support once you do this, and once you do this. And so he's got this long list of things he's trying to accomplish to get them to acknowledge him as their king. I'm not going to tell you exactly how it ends, but it's a series, so obviously it ends at least fairly well. And so I finally finished reading it, and I'd say it was okay. It wasn't my favorite Terry Brooks series, and the first chapter was really hard to get through. I mean, it wasn't bad. I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to read it again. But I need to get the second book in the series, because the other book I have is like the fourth in the series. So I am going to keep it. So it was decent. It's not my favorite book. It was probably, if I were going to rate it 5 stars, I would probably rate it about 3. It was a good read. It was a good read. And it just wasn't as good as the Shannara series was. It just didn't pull me into where I couldn't put it down, because it did take me a while to read it, because it was my bag book, which is the bag I carry in my purse. I've always got a book in my purse because I like to read. So I'd say probably about 3 stars out of 5. Now that I've finished this book, and I can't wait to read the second one, because he got the support he wanted. So now what's next? So I finished reading that, and I have just picked up another oldie but goodie. I read the first book in this series when I was in high school. I borrowed it from a friend, and I don't remember much about it because it was a very long time ago. But the title stuck in my head, so it was good enough that it stuck in my head. So I am a member of the Science Fiction Book Club, and my most recent purchase from the Science Fiction Book Club, even though I swore I wasn't going to buy any more books, because I need to get through these books. Because as you can see, there's a bookshelf right behind me. That's just manga. And that's a 6-foot tall shelf. It's not counting the like 5 other bookshelves in the house. So my next read for my bag is called Incarnations of Immortality by Piers Anthony. And he's another one of those, like Terry Brooks has been writing for a very long time. It's one of those classics. And this is an omnibus, which means it's got more than one book in it. It's got the first and the second, which the first is On a Pale Horse, which is what I'm reading now. I'm already 3 chapters in. And the second one is I think it's called Bearing an Hourglass. Let's see. Yes, second one is called Bearing an Hourglass. So if you would like my opinion on this one when I finish it, which may not take me as long because I just started reading it today while waiting for the bus, because that's what I do, is I take the books with me and I read at the bus stop. I just started reading it. I'm already 3 chapters in. So if you would like to know my opinion on this one when I am done for it, let me know in the comments and like the video, and I will review this one. This one is going back on my bookshelf. If you do like fantasy and you like the whole, ooh, dusty. That was interesting. If you like the dragons and the elves and the fairy people and stuff like that, like I do, I would suggest you read this. It's a read. It's a good read. I did enjoy it. Wasn't my favorite, but it is kind of hard to top the other series by him that I read. So, bookshelf reading. See y'all later.